This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 596, with guest Titania Jordan from Bark, recorded on January 4th, 2024. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. We had a white Christmas. I don't know about you guys. We didn't record last week due to the holiday a week, but we had one of those magical years here in the Omaha area where the snow came in at 10 a.m. Christmas Day and snowed through noon or 1 or most of the day. I got an inch maybe. Just enough to cover the snow and make it beautiful and have a beautiful white Christmas. So it was, I don't know about many of you where you live, no chance of having a white Christmas. But we had a white Christmas here. It was super special. Of course, we post a show with some world-class show notes, some AI-assisted show notes at theaverageguy.tv. This is if you're new to Home Gadget Geeks, head out to The Average Guy, all one word, theaverageguy.tv/HGG. And this is 596. And you can get all the show notes that are out there and available for this show out there as well. Big thanks to TJ Huddleston from the hometech.fm. He was here 2 weeks ago and joined us. And if you haven't caught that yet, that was 595. Did a bang up job. We talked about some home automation as well as some other stuff. So head out there. If you haven't listened to it, haven't caught up during the holidays, that's okay. We got shows for you to do that as well. Head out and catch that one. Big thanks also to our Patreon subscribers who keep the lights on every single week here. If you want to join the team, head out to theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. You can join it. We have a $5 plan. It's super simple. You can do it for 1 month or multiple months. Many of you are on the team and you've stayed on the team, and appreciate you doing that. Thanks for what you do. And if you want to join that again, theaverageguy.tv/Patreon, Patreon, will get you there as well. And then if you don't want to do any of those things, but you want to help out using the Amazon affiliate link, just head out to theaverageguy.tv, and then the menu on the right-hand side is to support on Amazon. Just click on that. There's nothing else you need to do. It'll take you to Amazon, drop a cookie there, and whatever you purchase, we make like a nickel, whatever it is, off of that. So if you want to do that as well, if you want to try that out, we'll be doing that all of 2024. Check it out, theaverageguy.tv, and click on that link. It says support on Amazon, and appreciate that as well. All right, we have Titania Jordan from Bark. Bark.us is the website. What they basically do is they make products that help protect children on the internet. And they do a fine job of it. I do have a product in hand here. We'll be talking about this at the end. This is not their only product. We talk about their phones. They have a premium service, and then they also have just a $6 a month router that you can buy. This is the one I got, and I purchased it. I went on the monthly plan just to get it started, to see how it would work. Plugged it in, set it up. We'll talk about that here at the end as we get going. But let me jump right in. If you're listening live to this, you can still ask questions. So jump in and ask those questions. But the next, 45 minutes, whatever I did on this, will be pre-recorded. I asked you guys if this would be okay, and many of you said, yeah, let's give it a try. And so here we go. Let me play this in. We'll see you at the end. I'll come back here at the end. I'll see you at the end of the webcast. Okay, hold on 1 second. I'll have to cut that part out. I don't know why that part wasn't working. I tested it like 8,000 times. I'm sure you guys couldn't hear it. Let me remove it. Yeah, there's no audio. Hold on, let me bring it back in. I'll pull all that out. I tested this like 8,000 times before we got going here. Just to make sure it would work. Got it all set up to work. Here we go. I'm here with Titania Jordan. She is the Chief Parent Officer at Bark. And Titania, welcome to Home Gadget Geeks.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being here.
Great to have you on. Interesting chief parent officer. I used to say I was the chief fun officer where I was at, but never heard of a chief parent officer before. Give us a little bit of your background, and then how do you get a role like the chief parent officer?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I am a parent. My son is in high school now. And I have spent my entire career at the intersection of parenting and tech. In fact, even before I was a mom, I worked in traditional media, local radio station in Atlanta, Georgia, but our demographic was women, 25 to 54. Majority of them were parents. And we had to create marketing campaigns and messaging tailored towards moms. So I've always just been in this space. When the opportunity came to do all things Bark, it felt like the right title. We already had a CMO at the time when I joined the company. And given my role, communications, marketing, messaging, PR, helping with product, just all the things. When you're at a startup, you wear a lot of hats. So chief parenting officer was what we landed on, given that the primary role is to let as many parents know about Bark as possible and make it as easy as possible for parents to keep their kids safer online. It just felt right. I've now grown into also being the CMO as well. And so if people want to know, like, okay, but what literally do you do at Bark all day? Like, why do they pay you? And it's essentially marketing. So
yeah. No, that's great. Hence why you're on the podcast here today. Let's get your version of Bark. I've spent some time already talking about it in the show that you're in now, but give us your elevator pitch. What does Bark do? Why is it important?
Okay. I love this. Thank you. Bark helps to keep your kids safer online. We help protect close to 7 million children now across primarily the United States, but we are a little bit global. We're using artificial intelligence to analyze the content and the context of your child's digital communications. And then we send you alerts when your children have encountered problematic content or problematic people. And so our tech, we have an app, we have a smartphone, we have an in-home device that connects to your internet service router provider. Our tech is analyzing over 40 categories of problematic content, whether it's bullying, cyberbullying, predation, sexual content, eating disorder related content, mental health issues, extreme violence, you name it. We're detecting that sort of level of problems and then alerting you with best recommended next steps for how to address. So we have the app, we have the Bark Home that connects to your router. And then about a year ago, we launched the Bark Phone because, as you know, so many children were getting iPhones or other phones that just weren't safe. And we thought, people can continue to use our app and that'd be great. But what if we could launch a smartphone that gave kids full functionality when they needed it, that didn't sacrifice on the tech side of things, but just arrived safe and was easier for parents to manage. And so that's what we did. So yeah, app, Bark Home, smartphone, we help families, we help schools, and we're alerting to a lot of issues.
As I was digging into the product set that you have, thinking through the what you offer, how much the phone makes a lot of sense now. I was telling you in pre-show, I spent a lot of years trying to protect my 5 online because we didn't have phones, right? It was pretty much a PC. Mm-hmm. And so the Bark Home is still that solution. Do you find, let's talk a little bit about that. I think the phone's the most intriguing, but for the Bark Home service, mm-hmm. Do you find our students, so this is protecting them on their own equipment at home, basically providing that level of security as they're surfing the web, mm-hmm. working on their schoolwork, that kinds of, what are you seeing in that space? How are parents using this, or what kind of feedback are you getting on that product?
Yeah, it's definitely picking up in popularity. what I am surprised by is that so many parents don't realize that that layer exists and that they need it. Um, you know, just the fact that there is internet service provided to your home, and the companies that provide that internet service actually have some built-in parental controls that if you're not using, you should call them and you should implement. There's a great deal of, there's a lack of knowledge that that exists. There's also, I think, the incorrect assumption that the internet service that comes to your home arrives safe and you have to work hard to try to find those bad things, when in reality, it does not arrive safe. It arrives wide open. And then it's our job as the parent caregiver to go and make it safe. Hence the Bark Home. There is sometimes misinformation where people think, well, won't this slow down my network, etc. And if it does, it's so negligible you won't notice. We're talking about, I don't want to misquote it because, again, marketing, not an engineer, but you can do that internet speed test to see how fast the uploads and how fast the downloads. And we have tested it so much that you should not notice it impacting your accessibility, which is great. But yeah, just the fact that even if your child doesn't have their own smartphone, there are gaming consoles, there are smart TVs inside the home, and you've got to make those safer. You've got to set time limits. You've got to implement filters. As you know, with all the work you had to do before all of this existed, it's going to take some time and some tools.
I use a service like this to kind of filter phishing schemes and some of those kinds of deals. But this wouldn't necessarily, I mean, yes, you're marketing this towards parents with children, but this would keep adults safe.
Oh, absolutely.
Too, right?
Yeah. If you're struggling with not wanting to encounter pornography so you can have a healthier relationship with your significant other, this can help you with that as well.
Do you know, as far as on the technology side, what's built into that box? What are you using? Pretty low power. I'm assuming it's pretty low power. You said it's pretty efficient, and so
very efficient.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't.
You get a dashboard though, right? From the parental standpoint, right? You get an opportunity to get a dashboard and kind of control. Do I get down to a granular level where I get to kind of figure out like, hey, it's okay to let this through, but not okay on these kinds of items?
Yeah. It's essentially an internet filter built by parents for parents. And so you can cover all the, connected devices in your home, whether it's TVs, Nintendos, PlayStations, iPads. You can set custom schedules, different times of the day, different kids, different ages have different rules or homework requirements where they really, just don't need to be connected, et cetera. You can just outright pause the internet to your kids' devices, but still allow the adults to access it if they need. You can create automatic bedtime schedules because kids need sleep. You can block access to specific apps and games. If you want to block Netflix, but allow Fortnite, that's up to you. And then obviously filtering websites, streaming services, online gaming, sexual content, and more.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave a lot of the details if you want to head out to bark.us. And there's lots of great information about digging in what can, what not. I remember as a parent, I would hear the kids go to bed, and then I could selectively shut off certain parts of the internet, right, for them. And I'd hear, oh, from them when I would, because they would be up sneaking, on the computer or whatever, right, trying to do that. And, there's such a struggle because there's such a desire for them to be online. But you're right. There are times I would, about 11, I would shut off the internet for them. And I'm assuming too, I can kind of lock that down by device, by console, whatever, right, to be able to get that kind of control over it. And I'm also assuming I get some reports back that would tell me maybe what happened overnight while I was sleeping, in case somebody got through, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it's very, very comprehensive, very detailed. I'm obsessed with our dashboard. I love the Bark dashboard that gives me insights. at the child level, at the device level, at the app level, at the game level, et cetera. It's really interesting and helpful to just encourage those conversations around, I'm not trying to keep you offline because I'm, mean mom. Like, you need to sleep for your physical and mental health. If you want to grow taller, that's not going to happen unless you're asleep. It's not going to happen if you're on TikTok. So
no, right on. I think it's and it's tough. This is the hard part of parenting, where you think, okay, I'm just going to control this, but without the conversations. Okay, some of the conversations around this are equally as important about why it's not great for you to be there, as opposed to you just can't do it, right? So some of those conversations have to happen as well. That's interesting. The service that I use is going to be expiring at some point, and this actually could be a great replacement. What would I pay if I wanted to just have the home service? Kind of what would I expect to pay? Can I buy a one-time? Is there a subscription associated with it? How does that work?
So right now, I'm literally had to check the site because, sometimes pricing changes. Right now it's $6 a month. So it is a subscription. I'm actually going through the checkout process now to verify that you can either do the $6 a month or $79 one-time fee. So,
okay. And that'd be like a lifetime,
yeah,
$80 and I'm in and we're good to go. And then I would still be able to, even if it was just me at the house, I could kind of set up the phishing, the bullying, the online, some pieces, just to kind of make sure I myself am protected from some of those as well.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, and
I might have to do that. I hadn't thought about that, but maybe I'll just replace because it's the key is I'm getting some safety when I'm not thinking about it, right? This I think is the key for parents. You can't be there all the time for the kids. You got to set some things up to make it work. And I think I would say the education that the parents are going to get on exactly what's going on. I think sometimes we don't want to know what's going on out there, right? And so learning go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, to that point, sometimes you don't want to know. It's really hard to come to terms with the fact that kids today are exposed to a lot more than we ever were, and at a much younger age, and at a more frequent rate. And then that begets well, how do I talk to my kids about this? These are not necessarily easy or comfortable topics. So sometimes ignorance is bliss. And even, you mentioned around 11 o'clock, you start to shut things down. That requires you to be awake at 11 o'clock to do that. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired. Like, good luck if I can stay up till 11. Like, I need sleep.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and in those days I didn't sleep very much. So I was, I was maybe going to bed about midnight, maybe waking up 5 or 6. But you're right. Well, I mean, the best system is to set it and forget it, right? Set a schedule and maybe not forget it, but go back and check that. I'd go back and check the logs from time to time.
Yes.
100%. You have a very cool, you mentioned it in your intro as you were talking about, but you have a phone as well. That sounds like that's a fairly new product. That's bold, I think, in some ways, to just say, hey, we're going to provide a phone that you can purchase also, I think, on a subscription. Talk a little bit about your phone offering for students as well and how it's being received.
Yeah, it's incredible. About a year ago, we launched the Bark phone because so many kids were getting smartphones at a younger age than ever before. And it was coming with a lot of problems. There was an increased need for the Bark app because of the problems that were happening to kids on smartphones. And so it was a very nuanced decision, right? We as a company and as parents ourselves don't feel like kids need to be in front of screens even more. And we certainly didn't want to be contributing to the problem. But we felt very strongly that if we could create a smartphone that arrived safe for the kids to use, easy for parents to monitor and manage from their own phone. If we could allow kids to text or email or play certain games or do whatever it is that kids want to do and are allowed to do on tech, but safely, then that's actually something that could benefit society. So yeah, we went forward with it. And it's been amazing, the reception. In fact, I was just last night had some team members over, and we were going undercover as we used a filter to make me look like 13. And from the Bark phone, I was creating, Instagram and that sort of accounts, and just seeing what came into that child account. And then the Bark alerts that I was getting because of it, like your child encountered pornography, your child encountered bullying, yada, 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 was incredible. That's not happening anywhere else. When kids get iPhones, unless their parents, put the Bark app and connect that, they're not going to have that insight. So it's a game changer. It's something that I wish existed when my son got his first smartphone. The Bark phone didn't exist. If it did, we probably would have avoided a lot of really tough things.
Yeah, I know for sure. Titania, let me ask you this. So you also you also have an app, right, for the phones
Yes.
that you can put on. And so if for existing users, if I was interested in doing this, but my kids already had phones, I can download the app, purchase a subscription service, and protect the phones. Similar? Is it the same? Less functionality, more functionality with the app versus the phone, or is it exactly the same? Do you know?
I'm really glad you asked that, and especially for your audience, given that they're probably more tech savvy than the general public. We'll get into some nuances. I will say, and it's hard for me to say this because I want everything that we have to be perfect, but candidly, the Bark phone is the best. The Bark app isn't as comprehensive as the Bark phone, and I wish it was, but it's actually not our fault. It's Apple's fault. Like, if you have the Bark phone, you will be able to fully monitor Snapchat and other apps. If your child has an iPhone and you use the Bark app, you will get certain alerts. Like if your child, let's say, takes a screenshot of something that happened on Snapchat and saves it to their camera roll, the app will detect dangers on the camera roll. But Snapchat does not give any third party access to monitor its platform. And so that's an instance where if you want your kid to have Snapchat, but you want them to be as safe as possible, you should probably go with the Bark phone instead of the Bark app. But to your point, so many kids already have devices, and they need to be safer because the built-in parental controls that come either with Apple or Google Family Link or the social media platforms aren't good enough. They are not going to proactively alert you to dangers. And so the Bark app is a helpful layer to have on top of that. And it's what we built our company on, for the year before we launched the smartphone, plus 5 years. So yes, it's a lot. It's a lot to decide what to do. There's a lot of things you have to consider, but start with what does your child need to access? Who does your child need to access? What are they uniquely positioned for in terms of strengths and weaknesses? And then evaluate the best tech setup for them.
So working with your customers are the parents, and they have the hardest job in the world.
Yeah.
Right. It's very complicated, right? What's your relationship like with the parents as far as working with them to help when, my role also for my daytime job is really working in the global community to make sure they're informed and they're learning. And what kind of things do you do? Because I just can't. This is like an impossible task. So how are you guys working with your customers to educate them on this? Because they're going to need help, right?
Absolutely. This isn't like, hey, go get this app and download it and you're going to be good to go. It is not an easy button. It's not a set it and forget it thing. There is a large degree of hand holding, and we're happy to do that. So, the majority, one of the largest departments in our company is support, customer support. If you're having trouble with understanding the nuances or getting things connected or just any of that, we're here to help. It's so nice to be able to phone a friend when it comes to parenting and tech. That's essentially our support team. In addition to that, because of what we analyze, we have a lot of learnings. So we're able to publish case studies and guides for, what certain text and emoji slang mean. We're able to go deep on, what you need to know about certain apps, whether or not you use Bark or not. Here's what you need to know. Here's what comes with TikTok. Here's what you can set up. Here's how kids can turn it off. It's just, there's a lot of education that needs to take place, and we're happy to create content to help with that. I started a Facebook group called Parenting in a Tech World a few years ago. It now has 430,000 parents in it, just like you and me. Like, let's talk about routers.
Yeah.
And let's talk about TikTok, and let's talk about, if your kid is either the bully or the bullied, what do you do? So our parents need community, and we provide that for them. There's even other things that we've been so happy to be a part of, like Childhood 2.0. It's a documentary. It's free. It's been viewed, close to 4 million people. And it really just goes deep on what it's like to be a child today, because it's different than any other time in human history. So in short answer, a lot of education, hopefully a lot of empowerment, and it's community. It's very hard to be a parent today.
Yeah. You mentioned AI when we first started talking here. And of course, that's a buzzword in the tech space. Everybody's saying AI. Right. Talk a little bit about, though, from how you guys are thinking about AI, and where does that come in handy as far as the work that needs to be done behind the scenes? Because it's way more complicated than just denial of service. Right.
Yes. Yeah. And so, when you were at the age and stage of trying to keep your kids safer online, something like Bark didn't exist. Instead, I believe, and interrupt me if I'm incorrect, but it was more, keystroke logging and mirroring, an actual copy of everything that was happening, the data coming in, the data going out, getting a list of all the sites visited. It was a lot to sift through.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about AI, or artificial intelligence, and machine learning algorithms is it can take a lot of the hard, time-consuming stuff and consolidate it and present it to you in a digestible format and learn from itself. So if, 50 kids in 1 hour start to use the snowflake emoji and it's not snowing, our algorithm can go deeper and figure out, what does this mean? And eventually realize, oh, this could mean cocaine. And now we need to add this into our drug-related alerts. It's just a faster way of analyzing content and context, so that it's not the basic keyword triggers, but really learning the nuances of digital communication and then helping to cut through the clutter. And I say all of this, full disclosure, as not a data scientist, not an engineer. I'm close enough to it to be able to speak about it, but that might be a whole nother episode, is to connect with our engineering team, because they are amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's an ever moving target. I mean, it's just like a human being. It's just very, very complicated. You put a bunch of humans together, it gets even more complicated. And then when you have bad actors and you have threat actors out there who are engineering ways to reach, to exploit, to take advantage of, to penetrate, then it gets even harder. And they know what they're doing. You're trying to figure out what they're doing without knowing, right? Without knowing. Oftentimes it's a very thankless task to do. When it's done right, nobody sees it. When it's done wrong, everybody sees it, right? From that perspective. Speaking of that, what kind of feedback do you get from parents on this? I mean, you probably hear some of the success stories, and recap a little bit. I mean, what kind of things do you hear from parents on this?
I mean, every day at Bark currently, we're sending, I'd say, close to 100 severe self-harm or suicidal ideation alerts. And these are regarding children, right? And we're alerting their parents and caregivers to this. And And we hear from so many parents very frequently, thank you. Your technology saved my child's life, and that means the world. On top of that, we've escalated over 1,500 predators to law enforcement. Adults that were grooming children and talking to children and worse. And again, parents had no idea until Bark brought it to their attention. The mental health issues, the cyberbullying, the rabbit holes of misinformation that children can fall down when they're perhaps looking to, restrict calories or see what's happening in the Middle East. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so overwhelmingly, we hear gratitude from the parents that are, their families are better off because of our service. And also, candidly, we're hearing, some frustrations from parents who, they might get upset. Well, why can't the Bark app help me with Snapchat more? And it's like, it's not us. It's the platform. They prioritize disappearing messages of children over your child's safety and well-being. And you're going to have to take that up with them, so it's education as well of just the landscape of where we are.
What about, we talked about education for the parents, which I think is super important, but there is an opportunity to educate the kids in this case too. And so you've got the platform, you have that on that, you may or may not have the ability to get to them at all times, but what are you able to do for this? Because they're not always wanting to listen either.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
But what are you guys doing for that?
You can have the best relationship with your child. In fact, I think my son and I have a great relationship, but it doesn't mean he always wants to talk to me at all, much less about heavy issues. And so we work hard to make sure the parents understand the importance of being proactive and communicating that they're using Bark, the why behind Bark. We don't advocate using Bark secretly. We're not trying to be spyware. It's about like those open conversations, just like child, when I put you in a car, I make sure you have a seatbelt. And it's not fail proof, but it's certainly very helpful and much safer with that seatbelt. When you're going to use tech, we're going to have Bark, and it's going to let me know about X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C. But otherwise, I'm not going to be seeing everything that you're doing because I don't need to. It's not about not trusting your child, although they are children, they're going to make mistakes. Good kids make bad choices. It's about not naively trusting the entire world, the entire World Wide Web. So I will hope that once the children whose families have used Bark have gotten older and they look back, when you're a kid, you don't always love some of the decisions your parents made for your health and wellness, but you certainly appreciate them once you get older. And I think that's where we are.
Yeah. No, listen, it's not easy. One of the best days for me ever was when I didn't have to do it anymore. The kids had moved on. They began to move out, right? They got older. We could allow them to kind of pass those decisions on to them. I think in a lot of ways, it's a combination. It can open the door. I love the fact that you don't encourage them to do it in secret. Like, hey, don't buy this thing and then bury it behind your firewall. And then, like, oh, sorry, no, you can't get to that. Right. Needing to have those conversations, right, that go on with the student. And they're hard. It is not easy. Like it's the hardest thing in the world to do, to have those kind of conversations, to say, I know all your friends are out there doing this, but this is very dangerous. And we need to have some discussions around it. It's really, really hard. I'm assuming in my days, no way to track conversations, but I've heard you say several times you're able to monitor the conversations that are happening. And is the AI looking at those conversations then, I'm assuming, to kind of pull out like, hey, this may be potentially scary. And that's a tough thing. That's speech, right? Which in America, we guard a lot with How does that work a little bit more? And have you run into any issues with that?
With regards to speech, it's actually been really interesting and helpful, especially when it comes to escalating predatory and grooming situations, because adults speak so differently than children. So when a child thinks that they're talking to another child, our algorithm is very, very easily able to understand that this is not a child they're talking to, just because of the language nuances. So it's fascinating. Again, I'm not a data scientist. I'm not an engineer.
Right.
I'm not close enough to that aspect of our operations, but I am close enough to know that and hear firsthand from parents that said, I cannot believe that Bark picked up on this, but I'm so glad it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a powerful tool to have at in a scary one to have. You alluded to this just a second ago. Some parents don't want to know. And I'll admit, there were times I didn't want to, you're like, oh, so hard, like, got to do something about it once I know it. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes we just want to live in blissful ignorance that our kids are sleeping through the night and not looking at anything bad and not making any bad choices. And I hope that's the case for so many of you, but
yeah,
I know it's not.
No. Well, listen, oftentimes I need protection for myself. Like, it's not always just about our relationship with our children. We get ourselves into issues by clicking on things, or, I mean, there have been times I've clicked on things and my firewall has stopped me, and like, why won't it go check the alerts? You're like, oh, okay. I got suckered into that one. And so I like the accountability on the back end, even from a parental perspective, to say, hey, there are moments I make mistakes, or I might be getting into a conversation. Lately, I've seen conversations come through LinkedIn or come through Facebook, and they've hijacked somebody's account or whatever, and there may be some maliciousness to it, right? I wouldn't mind having an adult version, and I know that it can do this, but I wouldn't mind having an adult version of Bark that it takes care of me, right? And,
it'd be great if I could have an adult version of Bark that could interrupt me on my Instagram scroll and say, hey, if you keep scrolling, you're going to start to feel really bad about yourself because you're looking at everybody's filtered lives.
Yeah.
Put the phone down, go play with your dog. Like, yes. We need that.
Yeah. Oh, just like screen, like, have you had enough? Just kind of a reminder. Hey, you've been at this for 35 or 40 minutes or whatever now.
Go talk to an actual human in real life.
Go for a walk. Yeah. Well, that is, I mean, that's a big, it's a big component to this, and our kids now are facing this more than anyone else, that you can literally now live an entire life separated from actual humans. Things can be delivered to you that you don't need to necessarily leave. Maybe you're working a job from home. You find, during the pandemic, I would find myself like, I haven't been outside the house in 4 days, right? And, you think, and sometimes that provides a sense of safety. It doesn't surprise me that the kids pull into that safety of, I don't want, the world is it's tough both on and offline in both those regards. And they pull into whatever fantasy world that makes them comfortable. So yeah, the protection on that's super important. Yeah. Titania, I don't want to be all depressing. Let's end on some good notes here on this. Well, we both know, listen, my audience is going to be very sophisticated on this. They understand all these components. Many of them are system administrators in organizations that have to do this at an organizational level.
Yeah.
Right? Wow. We have versions of this in the enterprise, right?
Yes.
Where it protects, and they're protecting intellectual property, and they're protecting safety and security and phishing attacks and all of those kinds of things that are happening. So they'll go, they have hardcore systems for this internally. I love the fact that this is a really easy $6 a month or $60 a year, however that works out. Check out for the current pricing, bark.us, if you want to see that. But I love the fact that I could get this kind of security for myself. Even like I said, I'm considering doing this. I still have one at home, but she's 24 and she's fine. And I can get it that way. When you think about what's coming up, as you think about the future for Bark and you look ahead a little bit, what do you guys get excited about? What kind of things are ahead for you?
We get excited that, as we all know, children's mental and physical health has been on the decline. And that's not what we're excited about. What we're excited about is that we are hoping that we can help reverse that decline. Because we now have this insight, we can help our kids. It's one thing if you don't know that your children are struggling, but when you know, then you can do something about it. And the collective knowledge that we have between parents and the people who care at social media platforms and legislators that understand how tech works, I'm actually really hopeful that we can work together to help change this trajectory. Because up until 2005, 2006, like we were on one path, and all of a sudden, not a good path, right? The more time kids are spending on social media and screens, things are not good. But we're learning, we're doing better, we're making some changes, we're becoming more aware of our need to have breaks and to hold certain members of big tech accountable for the harms that their platforms are causing children. So I'm excited that we are part of the solution, and I'm excited that our work brings awareness that will help, if not this current generation, the next one.
Titania, I didn't ask you this in the beginning, but I probably should have. Origin story for the company, like we're kind of as we come to the final moments of this, as we think about that always holds so much mission and purpose to it, and I think it'd be a good to when you guys think of your origin story there, can you dive into that just for a few minutes?
Absolutely, yes. So the incredible concept of Bark Technologies is the brainchild of Brian Basin. He's our CEO. He's a dad of two, a successful entrepreneur. In fact, one of his startups, he's had a couple successes in this space, but one of his startups was actually acquired by Twitter. And so he was working at Twitter at the time as part of the acquisition. And around that time, one of his children, his oldest son, was given access to a device. And given his background in tech, engineering, social media, he looked at the landscape and was like, wow, there's really no great way to keep my own son safer online that wasn't incredibly cumbersome or invasive. How much more are other parents, at a disadvantage right now? And so he took a risk. He left Twitter to start Bark to help keep kids safer online and in real life using artificial intelligence. And so thankful he did and hired me about a year later. And I joined the company when we were a team of 8, and now we're a team of over 140. So it's incredible.
Well, that's great. No, that's great. Great to hear you guys are growing and a great mission, great purpose. Again, this fits right in to many of the things I was thinking as a dad when my kids were growing up and just trying to, it was not any easier then. I don't think this stuff gets harder. I just think it's infinitely hard to be a parent, regardless of when you raised kids. They all have different problems in that. We just used to go out and bully each other on the streets as opposed to when we were playing as opposed to online. A little bit harder to do it in face to face, but we still did that. But parents do have a tough, as I like to say, a tough row to hoe at this point, and it's just they need all the help they can get. As we think about wrapping this up, then any other final thoughts on that you'd have on helping parents navigate this process and things, and maybe even advice that you've learned doing this job and interacting with parents?
Sure. Selfishly, I will request any super tech savvy listeners that you have. If you have found something that really works for you, methodologies, conversations, anything, love to hear about it. Please come join the Parenting in the Tech World Facebook group, and share, your journey. I'd love to connect with other parents just like you. So come join our group, come join our community. I always love to welcome members. I will say to please give yourself some grace. As we have talked about frequently, it is not easy to be a parent today. It's like no other time in the history of humans living on this planet. The things that we need to think through and worry about. So give yourself some grace. As long as your children know that you're a safe place and that they are fiercely and unconditionally loved, I think you're going to be okay. I think we're all going to be okay. It's just going to take some patience and leaning on each other to figure out how to get through all of this. And also don't be complacent. Certain things aren't going to change unless enough people advocate for it. So, at one time, cigarettes didn't have a warning label and we had lead in gasolines and paint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we're at that same point now with social media, and tech is not inherently good or evil. It's a tool. And we need to get to a place where the tools we are using are safe enough for us to use. And there's more thought going into how to protect those most vulnerable who are accessing it. So if you're passionate about this, get involved. Call your local politicians. We have got to fight for what's right for our kids and those coming after them.
Titania, I think with that, we'll put a wrap on it. Thank you for coming, Titania Jordan. She's the Chief Parenting Officer at Bark. And I'll have all the links, as you talked about, the Facebook group and some information on the site. Those will be in the show notes if folks want to go out and check those out. Thanks for taking the time today to jump in here and to spend some time with me. It does dig up some old desires of old for me, kind of thinking, oh, this could be kind of cool. Just for me, the monitoring aspect of it, my current solution doesn't give me a lot of great ways to monitor it. It tells me I'm safe and it gives me a few things, but I kind of want to dig a little deeper into this. And so this may be, as I think about renewing that or maybe not renewing it and moving on, this may be an option for me to look is to at least filter my own internet and for things coming in to provide that level of safety, even if it's just for me. So
awesome. Well, let's connect offline, and happy to talk through anything with you and put you in touch with the people who know the answers if I don't have them.
Well, we made it all the way to the end without the dogs barking. Titania, thanks for coming out. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take good care.
Thanks for sitting through that. It was kind of weird watching myself on that and then not knowing that was me earlier in the week. Recorded that just a few weeks ago. Titania, thank you for coming on and being a part of that. It was a fun interview. Fun watching it again. It's the third time I've watched it. And just fun to relive some of that. At one point, she got pretty emotional about that as we were talking about customer feedback. And of course, important to realize, these are humans involved. These are children who have, and as Tony says in chat, loves the child advocacy for this. And this is real stuff. This is a very, very, very real conversation. I mentioned in chat earlier, and Brian, thanks for the feedback on that. It's a good interview. It was fun to do. I was very passionate about it with my kids. I used a program called Enuff, ENUFF. Long gone, I think. I don't think it's available anymore. It was a one-time purchase, I think, or maybe I bought upgrades for it. I can't remember. It was a while ago. This was 10 or 15 years ago. And like I mentioned in the program, did a pretty good job of monitoring. The reporting was a little bit more difficult than Barks was, although I will mention, there is an infinite amount of ways to configure this piece. And it can be overwhelming. As I plugged it in just before Christmas. So again, I did the $6 subscription, picked up the device, plugged it in, had it working within about 15 minutes, began to configure it on the network. The kids were coming over for Christmas, and I didn't want to leave it on the network while all the Christmas stuff was going on. So I took it down. I'm going to put it back in and do some more testing with it. But as you can see, this is the $6 box. one network connection and you think you need two, but you don't. You plug it in, it picks up on the network, you bring it, you assign it or get it connected in the network, give it access to your network. And then just start assigning devices to it. It starts finding the devices that are in there and start assigning to them, giving them permissions. What do you want to allow them to have? What do you want them to do? It's a little bit of work, friends. I'm not going to lie. Like anytime you're going to do this kind of stuff, it is not a 10-minute set it up and forget about it. If you go to the Facebook group, and I'll post that link to this in the show notes as well as later on. I posted it in the chat here for our live folks. They 415,000, 413,000. It's a lot of people for a Facebook group. A lot of conversations going on there. That in itself can be overwhelming. So just be careful on that. Folks asking those questions. I don't know how she moderates that. I'm sure they've got some folks helping with the moderation. But it's a lot to do. And I don't want to say that to discourage you, by the way, or I don't want, as you're working with people who do this, oftentimes, if you're listening to this program, you're probably savvy enough that you're the one helping people doing with it. It is one of those things where you, I just noticed there's a spot for an SD card in there. This little thing's, I think a little is this, this router that we have. It's probably just a little Raspberry Pi or a Raspberry Pi-ish, but there's some interesting things in there. I need to dig into this a little bit more. It's also got a USB port on it in the front. Power over on this side, power here over to the right, USB, and then network connection. These are the only two power and network you need. But let me finish that thought. There's a lot to configure. It does give you, this is where it's so much better than enough, what I used before, because I get email alerts when things happen. And you get kind of weekly, you can configure it however you want, but you can get like weekly updates and weekly statistics or things that are going on and blocks. Let me just be really transparent for a second. The hardest part of this is not setting it up. The hardest part of it is dealing with the alerts and doing something about them when you get them. That's the hardest part. It's heartbreaking. I remember when the kids would go to sites that I would know and I'd be heartbroken. I just would know. And that's the hardest part of all of this. If you're gonna, this is why the conversations are important. I said in chat, I wish I would have had in those days more conversations than I did. I feel more empowered today. Well, of course, my kids are adults. Listen, you can't go back and no regrets. I did everything I could in the day that I did it. But I wish now, like I said, if I was encouraging anyone, I would say, don't shy away from, I know it's hard. It's hard to have, you have a 14-year-old and it's hard to say, yeah, look, I know what you're going through here. Let's just talk a little bit about this. And here's why I'm doing this. Right. And kids are super savvy. They'll figure out ways around this. This little device, only good on the home network. This Bark router, only good on the home network. Once they leave their phone, this is why maybe, and they have before they came out with the Bark phone a year ago, they have this premium product. So say your son or daughter has an iPhone, you can do the premium plan. It's $12 today as we're recording, and that's better than nothing in that case. The Bark phone is Android only. And like I mentioned this in chat, the $29 plan is kind of stripped down nothing, kind of gives them just a few, and I'll leave the link. You can head out to bark.us and go through all this if you want. It's a very stripped down phone for $29 a month. The real plan for most students for what they need is going to be $59. It's going to be $59. They got other plans as well. And you can get some, some fairly nice phones that are in there. I will say this, the teenagers are very short. And you're like, yeah, I could buy my own phone and do some things on it. Yeah, you could, or you could let them handle or have them help you on some of these things. So I think, listen, I'm not here to sell you anything. This was just such an interesting product brings up some interesting questions, some hard things to talk about, some hard things to do. And so I wanted to bring that out to you. All that information's out at bark.us. Appreciate you guys coming out who are out live asking the questions as we kind of played that interview in. I should have brought more of those questions on screen. If you're watching this on the YouTube video, should have brought some more of those questions on screen. But appreciate you guys working through it. Titania, thank you for coming on and for being a part of this. Tony, thank you for tweeting it just a minute ago. He threw that out on Twitter, and so Tony, thanks for doing that. I retweeted that as well, and kind of a fun way to kick off the new year. Maybe a New Year's resolution for you or for those that you help. I think Joe in chat had said he was talking about this with a friend, and they just purchased one of the Bark phones. Great way to do it. Great way to think about it. And again, great purpose behind this. And it's not over when you set up one of these devices, by the way, on your network or whatever. It's not over. It's just beginning as you're thinking about what needs to happen and the conversations that need to happen. Tony's so good. He tweeted while he was working. Thanks, Tony. It's scary to me that you're listening to this while you're working, but thank you. Thanks for doing that. Appreciate you. And Brian says in chat, really appreciated the importance of being open about using it with the kids. And I wholeheartedly agree. Ken says on the way out, great topic, one of the many solutions, but one that I wasn't aware of. And I think on their website, they say they've got some stats, 29 million. Let's go back here. Let me click on the website here. So 6.9 million children covered by Bark, 1.9 million severe self-harm situations detected, and 3.8 million severe bullying situations detected. This may be one of those areas that AI really has. I mean, it does a lot of weird stuff. That's probably not helpful. This may be one of those areas that's helpful. So check it out today, bark.us. Titania, thanks for coming on. Well, with that, we'll wrap it. First one of the year. I'd love your feedback on this, whether you're on YouTube, if you're watching this both on the live channel, which is the Average Guy TV, or if you're listening on the publishing channel. I think it just has my name on it, Jim Collison. Leave a comment. I'd love your feedback on this not brand new, but kind of new style of playing in an interview like this. If you're listening on the podcast and you want to send me an email, send that to jim@theaverageguy.tv. Love your feedback on that. Love for you to check out the Facebook group that they have and or the products that they have at bark.us. Not a sponsored thing. I bought it myself. Your help on Patreon, right, does those things. It kind of allows me to do that kind of stuff. If you want to join the Patreon team, theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. We'll get you there as well. Ken says, this reminds me of the old days of Home Tech and Home Gadget Geeks talking about home network security, tech, and kids. Yeah, we've kind of moved away from it. A lot of us have gotten a little older. Kids have moved away. I don't know, Ken. Maybe it'll be a resurgence of some of this content that is out there. Don't forget, speaking of that, the old days, the AverageGuy.tv platform, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. And, of course, that's Christian. Check it out. Plans start as little as $10 a month. Visit Maple Grove Partners, all one word, maplegrovepartners.com. There's a link to it, by the way, at theaverageguy.tv if you want to go out. I think I have a partners or a sponsored tab. You can head out there and get that as well. If you want to leave us a message, head out to homegadgetgeeks.com. There's a little microphone there, and you can just leave me a message. Great way, 30 seconds. A great way to get information into the show. And like I mentioned, you can join us on the Discord group. I didn't mention this. If you want to join us in the Discord group, and it's a friendly group, a great way to talk about it. theaverageguy.tv/Discord. And then don't forget, if you're purchasing on Amazon, head out to theaverageguy.tv and click on the support on Amazon link, just in the right-hand corner. It's right there. You literally need to do nothing. Just click on it. It'll take you to Amazon, and then you can go shopping. Great way. Some of you have. We've already had 100 or 150 clicks since we set that back up, and a couple of you have purchased through it. So thanks for doing that. I appreciate it. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at the averageguy.tv live. If you liked this style and you want maybe to interview an industry person and you have a contact in there, make a connection between the two of us. Send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Be fun to give this a try if this works out. Currently have an opening next week, so I may or may not be here. I'll probably try and find one of the guys to join me next week. The week of the 18th is Christian. So Christian's back. We're going to ask him the question, okay, so now what's up with LastPass and Bitwarden, right? So it's been a while. We're going to come back to that question. And then on the 25th of January, Bob and Ryan will be fresh off CES. So we'll spend some time talking about that as well. I got some things to fill in, but Tony Rayner, the Twitter extraordinaire, I heard a funny thing about what they're using for the name Twitter. I'll share that on Ask the Podcast Coach on Saturday morning. But Tony will be joining us coming up here in February. I'm looking forward to that. So we are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. We'll get you there. And we've got plenty more things coming up, and appreciate you and all that you were doing. I am fine. I'm getting better every day, which is great. My body is relearning some new things, which has always been a challenge. I'm not 100% there yet, but things are slowly starting to make their way back from the brink, and I'm getting healthy again, which is always nice. So, for those of you well-wishers, and that was many of you, I heard from many of you on that. I appreciate that. It does make a difference. I need to do that more. My neighbor 2 doors up has cancer, and he's in chemo. In fact, today was his 3rd round of chemo. I need to ping him right after the show is over just to see how he's feeling. I know how he's feeling. He's feeling terrible. And so it's those kinds of the notes, though, are nice. And I appreciate you guys who sent me, all you well-wishers who sent me those notes as I've been going through. It's not out of the woods totally yet, but I am healing. This week I've been doing 3 miles on the treadmill. So I'm making up for lost time, getting back into shape, hopefully, right? And getting some things going. Thanks for coming out. For those of you who listen live, I'll do a little bit of post show. If you have any post show questions, you can throw them in chat. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.